Hi, you're listening to Engagement Drivers, presented by EveryoneSocial. Each week, we'll share actionable tips, strategies, and success stories that you and your teams can use to steer your brand, social, and employee engagement in the right direction.
Hi, I'm Laura Moss, Senior Content Marketing Manager here at EveryoneSocial, and welcome to another edition of Employee Advocacy Week. Today, we are talking about utilizing employee advocacy to drive authentic talent marketing, and we have Talent Marketing Director at App Annie, Shaunda Zilich, here today. I'll turn it over to her to introduce herself and tell us a little about her experience working in employee advocacy.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Laura. This is really exciting. And honestly, I love this idea of Employee Advocacy Week. So hopefully today we'll talk about some things that people can take away and put into practice. But just by way of introduction, yeah, my name is Shaunda Zilich. And, I started into this journey about 15 years ago. And I want to kind of go back and talk a little bit about it because I think there's lots of people that are at different parts of the journey for employee advocacy and for talent marketing. But I started, like I said, 15 years ago with General Electric, so a much larger company. They were hiring for a social media recruiter. And my background's in marketing, not in HR, not in talent. And I was kind of like, General Electric, I want to try working for a big company. I want to see what that's all about. And I knew the social media side of things as far as the marketing side. And so I stepped into the role. And what I found was, this really huge opportunity out there for applying my marketing skills and applying, really the way we've done sales for a long time to the recruiting side or to HR, to talent. And, obviously that includes employee advocacy, and we can talk a little bit more about that today. But started into that role at General Electric. Like I said, they were hiring a social media recruiter. I don't think they knew what they actually needed. I did not know what I was getting into. But the journey led me to realize that there was a whole lot of data. There was a whole lot of just information that we weren't using to customize the journey for talent along the way. I always divided into lead and then candidate and employee. And so really started into that with them and really, obviously they are a large company, so used a lot of data in our favor to be predictive on where we're finding talent. A couple years ago, got a call from a company called Qualtrics in Utah, and was excited about not only standing up their employment brand, using employee advocacy and other things, but also actually the platform itself is a database platform, making, or drawing insights from data in the employee experience, the customer experience, brand experience, and product experience, and being able to use that data to actually drive to actions of how we can improve those experiences. And so was excited to stand up their employment brand, but then also maybe weigh into that platform and that idea of using data and storytelling. We can talk more about that in a second. But then now moving to a much smaller company still yet, App Annie, still around 500 employees. So on the small side comparatively, I guess. And standing up their employment brand and really starting with some talent, with some employee advocacy as well. And again, we can talk more about that. I guess one of the things, though, that I would do by introduction is in all three of these journeys, no matter what size the company, I really put together three different pieces of that journey. And we can talk more about how they all, come together, but basically establishing the foundation and the brand. So what is that employment brand and formalizing that? The second one is, what are we going to use for content? If we're going to advocate for something, we got to have some content. And then the third is that distribution. And that's really where that employee advocacy part comes into play.
Yeah, so let's just go ahead and jump into that and talk about these three parts that are involved in creating a talent brand. Can you explain a bit more how they work, each one of those?
Sure. So like I said, the foundation is the beginning. And if you think about it, we all have an employment brand. We all have a talent brand. Whether we take care of it, whether we acknowledge it or not, it exists of what does the talent brand look like as far as the talent working at our company. So really that foundation part is establishing what do we want it to look like. And it's not necessarily what do we want it to look like fake, but like how do we formalize it, right? What is going on in our companies? What are our companies known for as far as the day-to-day being employed there? what does that look like? And you could kind of think of culture. What is that culture? I've heard some people call it the aura, right? Like if I walk into the building, if I walk into a team meeting, what is that feeling, right? So what is that employment brand, and formalizing it. So at GE, we did GE Careers, which was that brand that we established, and we said this is what we're going to call it, whether it's using the hashtag or some of our social channels. At Qualtrics, it was Qualtrics Life, and even beyond the blog and the social channels, we used it every day in the employee experience, whether it was capturing, a snack that we offered before an all hands meeting, a picture on Instagram, or if it was a shirt, with Qualtrics Life on it, down to, I'm sure I have some sort of branding around here right now, down to, a pop socket on your phone. It was Qualtrics Life, basically, right? So really kind of establishing what does that brand look like and what does it represent. A lot of times when you think about what does it represent, you are immediately drawn to your values, right? Even values as a company. And I think a lot of people at this point spend a lot of time on EVP, which is fine, doing some research and figuring out what that employee value prop is. That's great. My approach has always been that we actually take the values that hold the culture true, and we decide, the values are then part of that foundational brand. At Qualtrics, we had tacos. It was the acronym tacos. Like it or not, you remember it that way, but it stood for transparency, all in, customer obsessed, one team, and scrappy. At App Annie, we have a set of values as well, and we are now not only encompassing those values into that foundational brand, but also into interviews and cultural interviews or cross-department interviews, into employee engagement. Are we holding true to those values and being able to say, like, is the employment brand we're representing actually what we're offering, right? So really that's more about that foundation of, it like I said, it exists, but actually taking hold of it and formalizing it and strategizing. How do we want to cultivate what already exists? And again, I just to kind of point out and make sure we caught this point, it's important to make sure that what we're selling is also what we're measuring, to make sure that we're holding true and being transparent with ourselves on the actual experience we're offering. I think right now with the great resignation upon us, it's actually something that's top of mind for everybody, right? Is like, well, am I selling what we're actually delivering, and making sure we're staying true to that? So that can be a great way to do that, is by formalizing that brand. That second piece, like I said, is the content area. The way we've done this in my past experiences has been to establish a blog, and really using that blog as like a content library. So if you Google, Qualtrics Life blog, if you look at GE Careers, we've already started doing a few stories at App Annie. You're going to find stories from employees. It's really their why story. Why do you do what you do every day? And then maybe a couple of other questions. They can be things about work. What surprised you most about working here? What does a day in the life of look like? Or they could even be non-related to the job, like, what's your top life hack? Just things that we all wonder every day anyways. But the idea is to capture those stories and to really showcase your employees as people, oddly enough. But like, they're not your company's robots walking around of just like a billboard for your company, right? Like, they have a life, and they encompass and they integrate that work life. So really painting a story and painting a picture of a real human being with a life and a job, and what that all looks like together. And that really builds out your content library. Once you have that in your content library, and I can speak a little bit to how I've found some success in gathering that content. Once you have that content library, though, then you can use it anywhere. And that's that third piece, is the distribution. The distribution, is through your own employees' social networks, right? And a little bit more about that and how we do that in a second. It's even through your company's social networks. And I would say for me in talent marketing side, it is the piece that is so important, because if you really think about it, our job descriptions, I don't care how much time you spend on job descriptions, they're boring. Like, I don't know if I've ever read, have you ever read through a whole job description, Laura? Like, I don't know that I've actually read through a job description before. I shouldn't say that. At BNE, where I work now, yes, totally, I can do it. No, just kidding. But like, instead of having a job description, why not have a story? Why not say, hey, we're hiring for this customer success position in Chicago, and here's so and so and their take on what it's like to do that job in Chicago, and be able to actually see it through the eyes of a person. And so, anyways, I think the distribution is so important, and that's where it really gets into this employee advocacy. You know, it's not only using it on our Qualtrics Life Social or GE Career Social or GE Social. It's not only having it on the blog or having it in a job description, but it's also posting it to a tool like EveryoneSocial or any kind of employee advocacy, being able to put those stories out there and then allow employees to decide, like, yeah, I'm going to share this with my network, or I'm, going to schedule this to go out, tomorrow when I'm going to be floating, the Provo River. I live here in Utah and I just did that. So it was the first thing that came to mind. But I'm going to be floating the Provo River, but I'm going to schedule this to go out tomorrow. And, all my friends that are in the customer success world, will see so-and-so's story, and this might be a job that they're interested in. And so that's really, again, the foundation, establishing the brand, the content, establishing that blog and really that library, if you will. And then really, like I said, the distribution is that third part and the magical part for the employee advocacy.
Before we jump into the advocacy, I want to ask you about content. So you talked a lot about about employee stories. And so I would love to hear, like, what makes telling and sharing like these company stories, these employee stories so effective for talent marketing?
Yeah, it's such a good question. It is, I really think it's all about through the eyes of an employee. And I always tell this story. And I do a brand ambassador training to actually get employees on board with telling their story and how to write their story. And I can give you kind of the parts of that in a second. But I always tell this story at the beginning of the brand ambassador training that, like, I shouldn't out myself, but I'm going, okay. So like, I like to run, and I always hesitate at saying that because I am so not a good runner. So like, please don't like think that like I'm like going to be on any race or anything. Anyways, so I like to run, and I go through running shoes pretty fast because really, it's how I get out of my head in the morning. I get up and run. It's the only time no one else can bother me. Right. So I go out and I run, and I go through running shoes really fast. And if I'm looking to get a new pair of running shoes, I'm probably not going to go to like Nike's website or Brooks's website or Adidas's website, right? Like, I'm going to go to a runner's forum online, and I'm going to say, like, hey, who's running about this many miles a week? I have a huge problem for some reason. My big toe chews through shoes, like the tops of shoes. It's not even like they're too small. Anyways, too much information. Sorry. But like, who has these issues with their feet, right? Like, and I trust people that have been there, done that like know what I'm talking about. I trust them way more than I trust Nike or Adidas or anybody else that says, hey, we got a new model running shoe, you should use it, right? Like, I'm not going to trust them. I trust people that have worn it and actually know what I'm experiencing. And if you think about it, that's what makes those employee stories so effective, is you have people that are going through the same walks of life. They're seeing things, like from the same point of view. And I would even go as far to say, like, that's what we long for as humans, right? Is like that community and that connection. I remember when I took this job, even at Qualtrics, I was moving my family across America, like from Kentucky to Utah. I had never been to Utah. And I was this, which by the way, I love it here. So don't get me wrong, but I really was like, oh my gosh, I had a 10-year-old son at the time. And I was like, I am ruining his life. Like, I just was like, I'm the worst mom. I'm ruining his life. I'm uprooting him from all his friends. I don't know if I can do this. And I met another woman that worked at Qualtrics who had just moved across the country with her 10-year-old son and her family. And I was like, well, either we're both ruining our kids' lives, or this is going to be okay, and we can do this. And if you think about that, that's all we want, is we want that sense of connection. We want to at least see, like, know that somebody's been there, done that somebody's going through the same thing as us, that, somebody's wondering the same things, they have the same questions. And so when you read an employee story and you're actually reading some of those thought processes, it just connects you. And I would go as far to say that it connects people on an emotional level, and a trust level that we probably don't have when we're just reading bullet points on a job description. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're gathering these employee stories, what are employees choosing to share, and what does this tell you about like what's resonating with them?
Oh yeah, I love that question. That's so good. So in their stories themselves, one of the things is I think there's always, if you think to yourself, you're like, well, I'm going through an interview process, or I'm thinking about this company, or maybe even I'm just a customer and I'm wanting to do business with this company. The number one thing in your mind all the time is, what are you not telling me? Right? Like what exact question do I need to ask, the right question to get the answer, And so one of the things that these employees love to write about is like, what surprised me most? Or what, when I got here, I was like, ooh, we need to work on that, and even if it isn't like, we don't just post stories of perfect stories, right? Like, woo, everything was perfect when I got here. I feel like that was one of those Lego songs, but anyways, uh, but like everything was great, right? Everything is awesome. That's what it is. Um, but we don't just post stories like that. We post stories about the journey, and I think employees love to write that. Like, I'm a part of building this company and making this company, not just like joining a perfect company, because I'm pretty sure there's not a perfect company out there. So I think that's one thing that really resonates with them, with employees to do. And then, like, the other thing about employee advocacy is, not only do you see like what employees like to write about, but you also see what do they like to post about. And so when we're using everyone's social, it's really easy to say, oh, this one had way more shares, or this one had way more reach, or whatever that looks like. And I think that's part, we forget about that part to measure sometimes, of like, hey, let's measure what even resonates with my own employees. I mean, we all are trying to look at what resonates with external talent, but let's look at what resonates with my own employees. One, I should then be able to guess what resonates externally. But then two, I know I'm engaging my own employees. And to your question, like, what do we find them posting most about? I would say it's a lot about like I said, the parts that find community, right? Whether it's just resonating with somebody that's, moving to a new area, or whatever that looks like, or even, you know, a lot of what we've discussed in forever now, but a lot in the last year and a half has been about DEI. And like, how do companies say like we're an inclusive environment? Like, companies can't just say that, like, we're inclusive. Like, that's like that doesn't tell anything. But if employees are actually writing the story about how we, built out these employee resource groups, or we, have this activity, or we have this event that's going on, or we're recruiting here, or we're doing this, and outreach is going on. When employees are writing about that, other employees want to share that, because that is genuine and that actually shares the story, rather than just saying like, oh, we're a company and we care about DEI, like that doesn't mean anything when a company says that. It's the actions and the stories that the employees tell that really resonate out there. So I would say employees really like to share about the stuff that like you're always wondering about during the process. And then they love to share about the stuff that creates that community and that actually showcases the examples of what we're saying we are, rather than just saying we are.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We often see, that content that's the most authentic goes the farthest, because people, we trust who's supplying it. We trust what they're saying. So we talked a bit about what they're choosing to share, but what about what their networks are interacting with? So when someone shares like a company story from App Annie or Qualtrics, and with their personal networks, what can you tell about what people are interacting with, and what does that mean to you in your position?
Yeah, I love that question too. And one of the things that we're always wondering is like, if and let me go back. Let me just step back for just a second. But like, if you look at it, we used to just, like, years ago, decades ago, really, we used to post job descriptions. Like, this was the extent of talent marketing. We would post job descriptions, people would apply to those, and then we'd hope for like a good one, right, in the net. We're like, just one good one. And we hire the best person that applied to the job. And, those jobs went everywhere. They went, on career or job boards. They went on social media. They went on our websites. And now we're in this world where really I don't need to track what's coming in through those. What I want to track is where people are coming from, what stories, right? And or maybe what ways the stories are being told. So I even think of like review sites. It used to be you looked at review sites and it was like, as a talent marketer, it was like the necessary evil. You like had to be present at the party where people talked about you, but you're like, yeah, you're holding my brand hostage, and that sort of thing. However, if you look at review sites, like I know Glassdoor does it, Comparably does it, where you can post company updates, you can post those stories out there. That's where we're starting to see those applicants come in. And to your point, the part that intrigues me in talent marketing is I can measure, what stories are bringing people in. What are they doing once they get to our website? One of the things we found was that applicants that were coming in through our employee stories, through the Qualtrics Life blog, over 50% of them were female applicants. That's insane in tech industry. Like, right? Like that is the next nearest source we had was like 34% were female. And so I think it really does something to not only see what's resonating externally and what talent's engaging with, which we see it so much in those stories. But then the second thing is, like how are we able to customize the journey after that, and to be able to help even where the applicant's coming from. So like another example would be on our Qualtrics Life blog, we have stories of people of, why Qualtrics, why do they do what they do? And then we also have stories where people talk about like how they spend what we called an experience bonus. Qualtrics does this amazing benefit where they give their employees an experience bonus, and it's basically to go do something on your bucket list. And we had an employee that went and visited and helped an orphanage in South America. And what we would see is people come in through her story and they would spend like mega amount of time reading her story. And then they would apply to a job. Well, like that's a ton of data we already know about that person. It really resonates with them to be able to give back, to be able to have that volunteer opportunity, and it really resonates with them to have a company that has that, on their perks or benefits. So I think, along with your question of like, what does resonate with people, I think it's also what resonates with which audience, and then also what can we do from that, right? Like how can we then customize the journey? Because you bet if that person comes in through the orphanage story and being able to care for an orphanage, we're going to add them to a list that talks about when we have our, annual volunteer day, and they're going to hear about all the stories going on in our annual volunteer day, because we know that already resonates with them. We know that that's something that's going to nurture and pipeline them along the way, to hopefully really, really, really want to work at that company.
Since you've worked at so many different companies and you have experience with big companies, small companies, starting employee advocacy programs, what advice do you have for people, no matter where they are in their journey, about how they can improve or expand their talent brand?
Yeah, and I think when we listen, especially like even as I'm listening to myself today, I'm like, I am overwhelming. So I apologize first, because I do get very passionate about this subject. And I think, I see a day where I think we're almost there. Like I think we're all starting to find where we really plug in and where we're a culture add to a company. But I see a day where our kids don't have to even struggle as much as I did to find my fit, to find my ad, right? Because we're starting to do this so well in just really helping talent find exactly where they're supposed to be. So yes, hopefully I'm not too overwhelming, but let me kind of simmer down to maybe some places where you're at on the journey, where you find yourself, and maybe some really tactical things that maybe you can put in place. So, if you find yourself at the beginning of this journey, if you're like, whoa, that all sounds awesome, but that's a lot. And I'm a full-time recruiter and I don't have time for this. Or maybe I'm working with our company brand and we haven't done anything on employment brand, but you're right, we should, but I don't have time for that. If you find yourself like really at the beginning, I would say find one thing, find like one little nugget that you can work on. And that might be one story. That might just be one person's story. Maybe you don't have a blog. Maybe you do. You can actually say, oh, we're going to do a people blog for the first time. I've been a part of that conversation. But maybe they post it to their LinkedIn profile. Maybe it's just an article on LinkedIn. And you say, all right, we're going to have one person's story. We're going to have them answer, why do you do what you do? That could be their day job. It could be a cause of the company. It could be what the company stands for, what service or product it provides to the world to make a difference in the world. But have them say, a couple sentences, why do you do what you do? Maybe there's a couple other questions in there, like what surprised you most? What's your day job look like? Maybe even another one that's not related to the job, right? Like what's your top life hack? Your favorite moment in work from home, just something that creates a personal story, and post that, whether it's again on the blog or their LinkedIn, and come up with some sort of strategy. Okay, we're going to get all our hiring managers that currently have an open on their team to share this in LinkedIn. And we're going to see if we can start to, attract that talent into those openings. And maybe they're going to share the story and it's going to land them on the careers website. And, we see some applications starting to come in. So just pick one thing that you think you can kind of tackle if you're at the beginning of this. I think if you're in the middle of this journey and you're like, yeah, Shaunda, I've been working on this, we've got some things in place. I would say really center in on measuring what's successful, because I think in this world of talent marketing, we can get really caught up in like everything and it can just go on forever and ever, and it can be overwhelming. So instead say, all right, let's measure for success and let's concentrate on the top 2 or 3 things that are bringing in success. Let's concentrate on the top 2 or 3 pieces of or material of content that are bringing in success, and like let's really zero in on those and do those really good instead of all the things kind of good, which people that know me on this podcast are now probably like, oh, that's what she does though. So yeah, I am really bad at that. So I'm trying to listen to my own advice on that one. I promise you. And then I would say if you're on, the next level, if you're like, yeah, we've got the talent marketing piece in place. Maybe you even have the employee advocacy in place. If you don't, I would challenge you to really come up with a non-manual way of doing it. How can I put this part in place and share the content and measure the content and, iterate on the strategy. But the next level, I think, is how do I connect this to the company brand? I think talent marketing has existed over here as it's been growing, and company brand still exists over here. And I think there's a really close day where those two show how they impact each other. And so how do I then mesh this employment brand, the formalization of it, the content, the distribution? How do I mesh it with what the company's doing? And how do I show the impact on the company brand? And that, to me, is kind of where this next level of employment brand is going, hopefully for a lot of our companies out there.
Well, you have given us so much to think about and so many actionable takeaways. So thank you for joining us for Employee Advocacy Week. If people have more questions or want to know how to get in touch with you, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, I will be the first to admit I'm horrible at LinkedIn InMail. Like it just overwhelms me for some reason. I get in there, I get lost. Anyways, so probably emailing me is probably the best. It's S Zilich. So it's SZILICH @appannie.com. Also, if you know how to spell my first name, maybe we'll have it on the screen or something. But if you know how to spell my first name, that is my Twitter handle. So it's SHAUNDA on Twitter. So definitely look me up there. And then obviously I'm on LinkedIn. I can't promise that I keep open my email. So if like you send me an email, if you don't hear from me, you probably want to try an email.
Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for having me. And I am so excited to hear about everybody's journey out there. like I said, I'm just a tad bit passionate about this. So if you are thinking, oh my gosh, I'd love to just, run some ideas by her or whatever. Yes, I will do that any day of the week. I am all about, I think if we all are on this journey together and we all keep building our ideas together, it just takes it so much further. So I would love to have a conversation if that's something you're looking for as well.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with more engagement insights. Want to know how EveryoneSocial can provide you with the tools needed to keep everyone at your company connected, informed, creating, and sharing? Visit EveryoneSocial.com to learn more.